Ever wonder which sauces are so bad you should avoid them at all costs and which four are actually worth it? Picture standing in your kitchen, staring at that crowded fridge door, not sure which bottles are helping you and which are quietly hurting. What if the ones you trust most are the real culprits, ready to find out which sauces make the cut? Let's kick things off with the creamy classic that somehow turned into a bottled letdown: bottled ranch dressing. Ranch dressing used to feel like the hero of American dining tables. Back in the day, people mixed up ranch from packets, stirring in buttermilk, mayonnaise, and spices until the whole kitchen smelled like garlic and dill. It felt homemade, even if it was not. But somewhere along the line, bottled ranch stepped in and quietly rewrote the recipe. The bottles lining supermarket shelves today often taste more like sugar, vegetable oil, and thickeners than fresh herbs. Sure, you still get that tangy creaminess, but it lingers in a way that feels more artificial than refreshing. Here's the tricky part: bottled ranch is everywhere. From pizza chains to school cafeterias, it is the dip for fries, the drizzle for wings, and the secret glue holding together countless casseroles. But when you compare it to fresh ranch, it is like eating a photocopy of the original. All the shapes are there, but none of the flavor pops. Worse, some brands load it with so much sodium and hidden sugars that you are basically dressing your salad in a science experiment. Can you save it? Maybe. A splash of lemon juice, a pinch of extra dill, or mixing it with Greek yogurt can lift the flavor. But should you have to doctor up your ranch every time? That is the real question. At the end of the day, bottled ranch is not the villain of sauces, but it is far from the hero it pretends to be. It is comfort food's sidekick that got a little too comfortable cutting corners. So tell me, do you still swear by bottled ranch, or have you made the switch to mixing it fresh at home? Coming in hot with smoky promises, but hiding a sugar salt overload is none other than bottled barbecue sauce. Barbecue sauce should be a celebration of slow smoked meats, tangy vinegar, and spices that wake up your tongue. But walk down the grocery aisle and you will see bottles boasting extra sweet or bold smoke that too often mean one thing: liquid sugar with a fake campfire aftertaste. The first ingredient on many labels is not tomatoes or vinegar, it is high fructose corn syrup. And while the word smoke sounds rustic, what you are usually tasting is liquid smoke extract, not the kind of flavor you get from wood crackling in a pit. That does not mean all bottled versions are hopeless. Some regional brands do a decent job, balancing tang, sweetness, and spice. But the mass market versions tend to smother food rather than complement it. Pour too much on ribs or chicken, and you are chewing candy-coated meat. And if you thought barbecue sauce was a lower calorie option, brace yourself. Some bottles carry as much sugar as soda. Barbecue sauce deserves better. The homemade version can be as simple as tomato paste, vinegar, brown sugar, and spices simmered on your stove. 15 minutes and you are tasting depth instead of shortcuts. The bottled versions, they often feel like paying for convenience at the cost of flavor. Still, the nostalgia is strong. Backyard cookouts, summer evenings, sticky fingers. Barbecue sauce is part of the American table, which is why it is such a shame that most bottled sauces taste more like dessert than dinner. So here's the real debate. Do you like your barbecue sauce smoky and tangy, or do you secretly love the extra sweet stuff? Sliding onto the table in its neon disguise, it is hard to ignore the syrupy sting of sweet and sour sauce packets. You know these little plastic cups. They come with takeout orders, promising to balance crispy egg rolls and chicken nuggets with that sweet tangy hit. Open one up and you are met with a glowing orange-red goo that looks more like melted candy than a sauce. Dip a piece of chicken in, and at first it is pleasant. Sweet, sharp, a little fruity. But then the aftertaste hits, and suddenly you're chasing it down with water. The problem here is not just flavor, it is ingredients. These packets are often more sugar than anything else, with a splash of vinegar to trick your tongue into thinking it is balanced. Real sweet and sour sauce, when made fresh, can have pineapple juice, rice vinegar, soy, and ginger working together. But what you get in the packets is closer to corn syrup with food dye. And let's be honest, as once you start dipping, it is hard to stop. That addictive sugar rush makes you go back for just one more. But the crash? It leaves you wishing you had skipped the sauce entirely and enjoyed the crispy food on its own. That does not stop the nostalgia factor. For many, those little packets feel tied to family takeout nights, late night drives, or quick lunches at the office. But nostalgia does not always taste as good as we remember. So, what about you? Do you still tear open those packets, or do you toss them straight into the junk drawer with the extra soy sauce? Up next is the noble salad staple that lost its soul in a jar: creamy Caesar dressing, bottled. When you hear Kaiser salad, you probably picture crisp romaine, garlicky dressing, parmesan, and maybe even anchovies, giving it that salty backbone. But when you grab a bottle off the shelf, what you are usually getting is mayonnaise with a garlic powder twist. Real Caesar dressing should taste bold, sharp, and fresh. A punch of lemon juice and a whisper of the sea. The bottled stuff often settles for thick and gloopy, heavy on the oil and preservatives. The saddest part? Caesar used to feel like a fancy treat. It was the salad you ordered at a nice restaurant, the one that made greens exciting. Now, bottled Caesar has been watered down into something you can barely tell apart from ranch. That bite of sharp parmesan, replaced with a hint of cheese flavor? That zing of lemon? Overpowered by stabilizers meant to give it a 2-year shelf life. There is nothing wrong with convenience, but Caesar dressing deserves to be fresh, not flat. Making it at home is surprisingly easy. Whisk together olive oil, egg yolk, garlic, lemon, parmesan, and yes, a touch of anchovy. Once you taste the difference, it is hard to go back. But for millions of people, bottled Caesar is still the standard. It is not terrible, but it is not the Caesar salad that earned its fame. It is a reminder that shortcuts in food usually come with the price. Do you think bottled Caesar still holds up, or is it one of those sauces that only shines when made fresh? Now for the childhood favorite that quietly morphed into liquid candy: ketchup with extra sweetness. Ketchup is about as American as it gets. Burgers, fries, meatloaf, eggs. There is hardly a food that has not been dunked in it. But somewhere along the way, ketchup brands leaned harder into sweetness, dialing up the sugar until it became less tomato sauce and more dessert topping. The tangy tomato base we remember from childhood is still there, but now it is buried under layers of corn syrup. It is easy to see why this happened. Sweetness is addictive, and it keeps people reaching for more. Kids especially love it, and parents keep buying it because it is familiar. But when every squirt carries more sugar than your morning cereal, it stops being a condiment and starts being a habit. And yet, there is comfort in it. That red squeeze bottle has been a part of the cookouts, diner counters, and lunchboxes for generations. Nostalgia makes us forgive a lot. Even if the ketchup today is sweeter than ever, people still see it as the trusty sidekick for fries and hot dogs. Still, it is worth asking: is it making our food better or just sweeter? Some chefs now recommend dialing back and choosing ketchups made with real tomatoes and less sugar. When you taste one of those side by side with the extra sweet versions, the difference is striking. So here's my question: when you reach for ketchup, are you chasing tomato flavor, or do you secretly prefer the sugar rush? Marching in from concession stands everywhere is the gooey imposter we call nacho cheese sauce. You can smell it before you see it. That oddly comforting scent of melted cheese wafting from stadium kiosks and movie theater counters. But the truth is, most nacho cheese sauce has very little to do with actual cheese. Instead, it is a mix of powdered dairy, oils, emulsifiers, and food coloring designed to mimic the real thing. At first bite, it feels creamy and salty, clinging to chips like a guilty pleasure. By the third or fourth bite, though, the aftertaste kicks in. Plastic-like, overly salty, and just a little unsettling. There is a nostalgia factor, of course. Many of us grew up with nachos at sports games or Friday night bowling alleys. That small plastic tray divided into chips and a cup of liquid gold. It felt like a treat, even if the cheese inside was about as authentic as spray paint. The problem is that what used to feel fun as a kid now tastes artificial as an adult. When you realize that the bright orange hue comes more from dye than cheddar, it takes some of the magic out of it. Can you upgrade nacho cheese? Sure, melt real cheddar with a splash of cream and a dash of chili powder, and suddenly you are eating comfort food worthy of seconds. But mass-produced nacho cheese sauce is less about flavor and more about nostalgia and convenience. It is the sauce that makes you smile for a moment, then leaves you thirsty and disappointed. Be honest. Do you still crave that fake nacho cheese, or have you moved on to the real thing? Next up, the so-called fiery kick that fizzles into buttery mush. Buffalo wing sauce, mass market. Buffalo wings should bring heat, tang, and just enough buttery richness to keep things balanced. But most bottled wing sauces from the grocery store lean too hard on butter flavoring and food dyes, leaving you with something that looks orange and tastes flat. Instead of that sharp pepper punch, you get a greasy coating that smothers the wings without excitement. It is like ordering fireworks and getting a candle. The sad part is that good buffalo sauce is simple: hot sauce, butter, and maybe a dash of garlic or vinegar. Done right, it is addictive. But the bottled versions stretch it out with stabilizers, oils, and watered down flavor that never quite scratches the itch. People keep buying it because it is easy. Just open, pour, and toss with frozen wings. And yes, it delivers some of that familiar game day feeling. But when you compare it to the real thing, wings tossed in freshly melted butter and hot sauce straight from the pan, the difference is night and day. Buffalo wings deserve better than bland orange liquid. So tell me, when it comes to wings, do you stick with bottled sauce, or do you make your own fiery mix at home? Sneaking in as the healthy choice, but really just a sugar bomb in disguise, is honey mustard. On the surface, it sounds wholesome. Mustard blended with honey, a little sweet and tangy harmony. And homemade versions can be exactly that: bright, balanced, and delicious. But most bottled honey mustard sauces lean heavily on sugar, corn syrup, and thickeners, turning what should be a simple condiment into a sticky mess. The mustard sharpness gets dulled down until you are basically dipping your chicken in candy. That is why so many people fall for it. It feels like a lighter option compared to ranch or barbecue sauce, but the nutritional label often tells a different story. Sodium, sugar, and preservatives pile up until the sauce is doing you more harm than good. Still, honey mustard has its loyal fans. Dunking nuggets into that golden dip is practically a childhood rite of passage, and even now it is a go-to at sandwich shops and diners. But once you taste a real homemade version, sharp Dijon blended with actual honey and a splash of vinegar, the bottled stuff never quite measures up again. It is a condiment caught between health halo and sugar trap. Do you order honey mustard because you love the flavor, or because it just feels like the safe choice? Landing with a crinkle and a salt punch stronger than the ocean are soy sauce packets. Everyone knows the little plastic sleeves you get with takeout. They pile up in drawers tossed aside until you find a dozen of them when you are looking for batteries. And when you do rip one open, the sauce inside often tastes more like salt water than real brewed soy sauce. That deep umami richness you expect, replaced with a thin chemical edge. Real soy sauce is brewed for months, sometimes longer, from soybeans, wheat, water, and salt. The result is complex, savory, and layered. But the mass-produced packets are rushed, using shortcuts and additives to mimic the flavor. Instead of complementing your food, they drown it in pure salt. Of course, the nostalgia is real. Late-night lo mein, sushi lunches at work, or quick-fried rice meals at home. Soy sauce packets have been there for all of it, but they are the fast food version of a condiment that deserves respect. Next time, try keeping a small bottle of authentic soy sauce in your pantry. You will never go back. Be honest, do you actually use the soy packets, or do they just end up cluttering your kitchen drawer? Here comes the diet-friendly label that trades taste for disappointment: low-fat Italian dressing. Back in the 1980s and 1990s, low-fat foods were marketed as the healthy solution to everything. Italian dressing was no exception. The problem? When food companies stripped out the fat, they replaced it with sugar and artificial thickeners. Instead of a bright, herby vinaigrette, you got a watery, flavorless liquid that clung sadly to your lettuce. Italian dressing should sing with garlic, oregano, vinegar, and olive oil. But low-fat versions are often muted, lacking the punch of herbs or the richness of real oil. They might look healthy on the label, but they rarely taste satisfying on the plate. People bought into it for decades, thinking it was better for them. But the truth is, fat carries flavor, and without it, you are left with a ghost of the real thing. If you want Italian dressing without the guilt, make it fresh with lemon juice, olive oil, and a few dried herbs. It will taste brighter, fresher, and healthier than anything from a bottle. So tell me, do you still reach for low-fat dressings or have you gone back to full-flavor vinaigrettes? And making a retro appearance that feels more like a gamble than a garnish? Thousand Island dressing. This sauce has been around for over a century, and for some people, it is a taste of nostalgia. But let's be real. Thousand Island is basically a mystery pink sauce that often tastes more like sugar and mayonnaise than anything distinct. It was originally made with hard-boiled eggs, pickles, and fresh ingredients, but most bottled versions have boiled it down to ketchup, mayo, and stabilizers. On a Reuben sandwich, it can shine, adding tang and richness. But on a salad, it often feels heavy, cloying, and oddly sweet. It is one of those condiments that people either swear by or avoid entirely. The truth is, it has become a shadow of itself. Once a handcrafted sauce with personality, it now sits on diner counters as a bottled relic of another time. If you love it, nothing I say will convince you otherwise. If you do not, you probably will not miss it. So, where do you stand? Classic comfort or outdated dressing that should stay in the past? Brightening things up with nostalgic tang and a little diner charm is French dressing, bright orange. Unlike Thousand Island, French dressing still carries a playful punch that keeps people coming back. Its vivid color may not scream natural, but the tangy sweet balance makes it a fun topping for salads and even a dip for fries. In fact, the bold orange hue is part of its appeal. It is cheerful, bright, and unmistakable. At its best, French dressing has a zippy vinegar base with just enough sweetness to balance it out. At its worst, it can lean too heavily on corn syrup and die. But compared to some sauces on this list, it still has enough personality to hold its ground. There is also a nostalgic pull. Many diners and cafeterias served it by the gallon, and it feels like a throwback to simpler times. It may not be refined, but it is reliable. The kind of sauce that reminds you of family picnics and school lunches. French dressing proves that not every sauce needs to be fancy to be worth it. So what about you? Do you still enjoy French dressing, or do you think it is just too sweet for today's tastes? Offering a jarred option that still manages to deliver freshness on a busy night is salsa in a jar. Now, nothing beats the taste of fresh salsa made with ripe tomatoes, onions, cilantro, and lime. But jarred salsa, when done right, comes surprisingly close. The texture might be smoother, the flavor is a little more cooked, but it still delivers that tangy, spicy kick that makes tacos and chips feel complete. Unlike many sauces on this list, salsa in a jar does not usually hide under mountains of sugar or preservatives. Yes, it is shelf-stable, but many brands keep the ingredients simple and recognizable. That makes it a rare win in the condiment aisle. Jarred salsa also carries convenience on its side. It is there when fresh tomatoes are out of season or when you just need a quick snack. It may not have the same brightness as homemade, but it holds its own. For many households, a jar of salsa is practically a pantry essential. What is your go-to? Do you prefer making fresh salsa, or are you happy to crack open a jar when the craving hits? Sliding in with a modern twist and creamy indulgence is gourmet aioli squeeze bottles. Aioli started as a Mediterranean sauce of garlic and olive oil, whipped into a flavorful spread. Today, it has become a trendy cousin of mayonnaise, showing up on burgers, sandwiches, and fries. While some bottled versions cut corners with cheap oils and artificial flavoring, a few actually hold up well, delivering a garlicky punch that feels indulgent and fresh. That is what makes it worth keeping around. It is versatile, adds depth to even the simplest dishes, and makes you feel like you are eating something special without a lot of effort. The key is finding brands that stick closer to real ingredients. Of course, it has also become a marketing gimmick. Slap the word gourmet on mayonnaise, add garlic powder, and suddenly it costs double. But when the flavor holds up, it earns its spot in the fridge door. Aioli proves that not every trendy sauce is a scam. Sometimes the upgrade really is worth it. So tell me, do you buy into the gourmet label or do you just see it as fancy mayonnaise? And finally, bringing balanced flavor and just enough umami punch to earn its spot. Teriyaki marinades. Teriyaki is one of those sauces that instantly transforms a plain piece of chicken, beef, or vegetables into something crave-worthy. At its core, it blends soy sauce, sugar, ginger, and garlic into a glaze that caramelizes beautifully when cooked. Even bottled versions, while not perfect, often manage to capture that savory sweet magic. Sure, some brands lean too heavily on sugar or salt, but the best ones strike a satisfying balance. That makes teriyaki marinades one of the few condiments in the aisle that feel more helpful than harmful. A quick pour, a short marinade, and suddenly dinner feels like takeout night at home. It is versatile too. Brush it on skewers, drizzle it over rice, or use it as a stir fry base. It holds up across the board. Teriyaki is proof that bottled sauces do not always have to mean disappointment. If you are going to keep one marinade in your pantry, this is the one to bet on. So here is the question. Do you prefer using bottled teriyaki, or do you make your own from scratch at home? And that wraps it up. Now I want to hear from you. So drop your most loved or most regrettable sauce in the comments. Hit like if this list stirred your appetite, and subscribe to the hidden menu so you never miss the secrets hiding in plain sight. And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.